I'm not gonna lie. When I first read the synopsis of this episode, all the while watching it the whole way through, I wanted to convince myself that this was a really good special, especially in live action form of The Loud House. But the thing is, it was rushed and it came out way too early. If the people took their time with this, all the while that this aired way earlier in the season, which also includes more character development of Charlie, then maybe I would have seen this as a long time coming, but let me tell you, the Willie Loud House has a lack of confidence, unlike the Loud House, which is saying something considering that even in the later seasons, despite the bad episodes, it still has some kind of confidence in some other capacity, no matter how insignificant it is. Just to get this out of the way for anyone who read the synopsis about the Louds and Flip doing a Loudpalooza, well, they do that at the second half of the second part of this special. The majority of the episode is mainly half of the Loud family pretending to be Flip's family in front of Walter, who is the brother of Flip. Usually I would consider this as false advertising, but at the same time, I'm not really expecting a lot from this live action show. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I'm being really honest with you. I really thought that this special alone was gonna be something special, judging by the synopsis. But considering it's mostly fast advertising and the majority of it just centers around Flip just trying to impress his brother by being part of a fake family that he's never been part of, I would say it would have been much more better if it happened in the cartoon, but considering that Flip was really hateable in the cartoon version, I'm going to assume that the only way to make Flip somewhat likable and try to start off from scratch is mainly focusing it in the live action version. Okay, let's get the positives out of the way. I actually found the actor playing Flip in this special really good. This is the same actor who played Bertram from Jessie, and I have to admit, he really plays the character Flip really good in live action form. And the scenes where Lincoln is reading the story to Lily during bedtime is honestly a good touch, knowing full well that the relationship between Lincoln and Lily does work out together. Loudapalooza, well, the Louds do the charity in order to save Flip's food and fuel, and the song performed by the cast. I'm gonna be really honest with you, even if I stated earlier that I wasn't expecting much, it doesn't change the fact that the setup of this special is similar to Deep Cuts. Well, the characters just do charity at the end, and for me personally, it's really saying something. It's really saying something that even though that Deep Cuts done it much worse than this, it just goes to show that there was nothing going for knowing how poorly written the story is in this special, and the spin-off itself. Lincoln's goal is to help Fuel reach more money in order to save his gas station, in order to have the emerald to give to Charlie before she leaves to Tennessee permanently. Granted, it's not permanently, but at the same time, knowing full well of how little development that Charlie had in this show, I honestly don't even know what to expect other than that Lincoln can't be able to pair up with any girl even without Chris Savino. Regardless if Chris Savino is a terrible person, I can't deny that Nickelodeon is doing a good job on trying to handle Lincoln just trying to get a girlfriend. Lenny, Lucy, Lisa, and Lana are trying to pretend to be the other sisters, kind of like cover girls. And if I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, it really feels like that they're really trying too hard to capture the magic from the episodes from the past. Like, I understand that that's something that shows will usually do for going on for so long, but the way I see it, especially in live action, it really felt like that regardless of just trying to use the other characters in order to be themselves in order to make the things work out, it really feels like that they're only doing this for the sake of just trying to capture the magic from previous episodes. Granted, it maybe flips choices on which siblings he needs in order to start a fake family in front of his brother. But considering he's portrayed much more different in this, and he doesn't do any selfish acts in this, it really feels like that they're trying to make him as the sad businessman who's been in the business for years and he's dealing with a midlife crisis of bankrupt. I'm just gonna say this right now. The character Flip from the original would probably never do any of the schemes he did in the live action show, which pretty much sums up onto why Flip is much more likable than he was. I can't say that this is a problem, but at the same time, it really sums up onto why so many characters are a lot more different the more you watch these episodes, especially after the Christmas film. The other half of the Loud siblings spent the majority of the first and second part in the basement acting like savages, mainly hungry for food, and they can't be able to take it anymore. I understand that they're trying way too hard to make these characters in character, but the problem is that upon watching all the episodes, despite with a few episodes focusing on one of the Loud siblings, it's difficult to look at the qualities of the Loud siblings when Lincoln and Clyde ended up getting more screen time than them. Like, I can admire the effort the actors are doing when they're being these characters, especially Lola, but at the same time, it really feels like that the only way for the Loud siblings, mainly the sisters, to get more screen time is that if they actually have subplots of their own. That's literally the sad reality, is that when Lincoln and including Clyde get more screen time, it's difficult to see the differences between the Loud sisters from this towards the cartoon version. It's one thing to make them different, but at the same time with little screen time, it really feels like that Lincoln, regardless if he always deals with his sisters day in and day out, he barely bonds with the sisters completely. Like, he may with Luna, but at the same time, it really feels like that this show's excuse of having the sisters by trying to go on their separate ways really felt really too severe compared to how they were portrayed in the later seasons of the Loud House. And since I've stated that, Lin Saw in this really dominates this entire special and some of the episodes before. And I'm being serious because the actor playing Lin Saw is the same one who played him in the cartoon version and one of the actors from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I'm just gonna say this right now that he has been playing this role way too much compared to the other Loud siblings, that it really feels like that he wants the family to be back together, only for me to realize that he had a difficult time letting it all go in the cartoon version, which he did, but now it really feels like that he just can't be able to get over the fact that even after Loie moved out, he's still dealing with this. I understand that parents always deal with a difficult time of letting go their children, but whenever I see Lin So in this, he instantly just takes over everything, that it's difficult for the majority of the screen time being shared with the other siblings so that we can actually know them a lot more in this spin-off. Whenever I see Lin So in this, especially in the previous episodes, it really feels like that he is trying way too hard knowing full well that this is taking place in live action and not cartoon. And in this, they try way too hard to make us feel sympathetic, even though it's supposed to play out as a joke, despite the fact that Flip is only doing this in order to impress his brother. In all honesty, regardless if the actor playing Lin So in this is a good actor, that doesn't automatically mean that you should have him being so over paranoid to be missed out of family activities, especially since that he wasn't being kicked out. Flip is just trying to impress his brother, and the only way for it to work is to have half of the family to be out of it, while the father being out of it. Granted, Flip put them in the basement, but it would have been a lot more better if they just have half of the family and Lin So to go to a different place in the meantime. Like, it would probably be a lot more better knowing full well that the characters will probably be fully aware of where the half of the characters will have been and give them food along the way. Let's be real. I know you guys will expect me to criticize of how Walter isn't being suspicious of how the Loud siblings are acting differently due to them being in disguises, especially Lucy being like Luann and doing a poor job at it. But the world building in this show compared to the Loud House, which is the original, is so difficult to take itself seriously, because after watching the Christmas film and all the episodes before this, I'm starting to convince that with this taking place in its own alternative universe, Nickelodeon has literally no hope in order to increase the writing or basically anything in the Loud House franchise, because at this point, I'm starting to convince that the reason why they made this into a live action show is for money, obviously, but to make their own version of the Loud House. I mean, let's be really honest with you. It's one thing to have these actors being the characters in live action form, which is something that the Fairly OddParents did in the past, and people have been criticizing that, and they're starting to criticize this, but the way I see it, it's really difficult to believe that Nickelodeon is willing to improve on anything. If they ever did any of this kind of stuff in the cartoon version, they will probably have nothing to work with, because the cartoon can save up more time compared to the live action version, whilst the cartoon version space that they have to offer, if they did this in cartoon version, they will have nothing at all. And I'm being serious that the episodes I've seen from this show has little effort, knowing full well that it's difficult to actually take themselves seriously, knowing full well that they're a lot more lifeless than the later seasons of the Loud House. Even if I imagine all this in cartoon form, I can guarantee you that it will probably be just as boring, knowing full well that people will probably criticize the heck out of it for taking ideas from previous episodes and just not trying way too hard to sympathize the other characters, mainly Flip, since that it will be taking place in the same universe. I wish that I would try to give this special the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I've watched all the episodes up until this point, and whenever I look at all the characters and the writing decisions in all these episodes, especially the episodes where Lincoln's actor has a diaper on, it shows how little effort Nickelodeon is doing with the Loud House in general, and it really shows it in live action. I'm gonna be really honest with you that upon going through so much criticism of what people have towards this show, especially in some episodes on Twitter, I don't even think that it's really possible to see this as its own thing, not because that it's connected to the Loud House franchise, but the fact that it's not even trying that hard to be that good. Like, granted, it's being better compared to the Fairytale Parents live-action films, but considering that this is a show and not being split up into multiple movies, it's glorifying Loud House in live action rather than making Loud House in live action good. Granted, at this point, it's really impossible to make cartoons into live action goods nowadays, but knowing full well that this ended up being much more better compared to the Fairytale Parents live action movies, that's literally the only accomplishment that the Willy Loud House can do. I would go on and on about this, but the thing is, we've all known that this is basically a problem when it comes to Nickelodeon turning cartoons into live action, so let's get into the bit you've all been waiting for. Lincoln's new love interest, Charlie. She appeared in the third episode when it was an alien orator, which includes Lincoln in a diaper, and the prom episode, well, she decides to be with Lincoln. In all honesty, this character is so underdeveloped that the fact that this all ended up happening in the span of 12 episodes, she only appears in 3 to 4 since that this is a 2-part episode. You can't expect me that the shipping between Lincoln and Charlie will ever work. Because let me tell you, compared to the other shippings I've seen when it comes to Lincoln being paired with girls at his age, Charlie has so little development that whenever I look at her on screen, she's just basically a background character. And I'm not being rude, I'm being really honest with you that Charlie doesn't do much in this spin-off to make me convinced that she is worthy of a qualification for being Lincoln's love interest. With this being part of Lincoln's goal of giving Charlie, who is referred to as the princess, the emerald before she leaves, it just leaves little stakes and it's difficult to actually find the enjoyment of the story in this 2-part episode really investing because of how little developed Charlie is. And the fact that Lincoln just trying to help out with Flip's situation even less convincing, considering that he's basically carrying the entire relationship rather than just having him and Charlie do that. And to be honest, that is something that Lincoln and Ryan did in the show. Granted, it wasn't really the best and it was a terrible start in the first episodes, but at the same time, it really felt like that they were attempting to make the relationship of Lincoln and Ryan work, despite the fact that without Chris Savino, Nickelodeon wants no pairing of Lincoln and Ryan when it comes to a romantic relationship. Even Stella, who made her first major appearance, had more of a personality than Charlie because she wasn't even trying to have any of the boys as her boyfriend. She just wants to be friends with them. And the fact that Charlie has less development than Stella is really saying something. When this special tries so hard to make you root for Lincoln, you also understand that Lincoln is literally just trying everything to make this work out, and yet Charlie, who is moving out of Roy Woods, had little development to actually understand onto what she feels towards Lincoln, because in the I Want to Hold Your Hand episode, when it comes to Lincoln confessing of what he actually feels, it's good, but at the same time, it's somewhat ruined knowing full well that was the last appearance that we saw of Charlie up until this 2-part episode. So the fact that she moves out of Royal Woods, I don't even think that this show or the franchise itself even cares about Lincoln being paired to the girl at this point. I just don't, because the more I think about it and what I said in my Study Muffin review, that Lincoln still has a crush on Miss DiMartino, despite the fact that he has a crush towards Charlie in this. You know you can't move forward when you keep going backwards. I'm being really honest with you. I'm not against with Lincoln being paired with Charlie. In fact, I think it would have worked out if it had more episodes and Charlie developed her own character in the same way as Ryan and Stella did. Because as far as I'm concerned, if this show or this 2-part episode doesn't do a good job to make me convinced that Charlie is an actual character, then I don't even think that Lincoln being paired with girls at his age isn't really something that is worth being bothered at in canon. Like, in the fandom, people have been doing that non-stop. And even if Lincoln is being paired with older girls, at the same time, it's mostly just trying to give him somewhat of a relief of all the stress he went through. Granted, there are alternative ways, but to be perfectly honest with you, Lincoln is easily shippable. But my point is that if you really want me to actually pair up Lincoln and Charlie, you need more time for the development. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you just miss out all the episodes involving Charlie or all the other episodes of the Willy Loud House and you just go straight to this 2-part episode, you would miss nothing. And the only sad thing is that you will probably see this as a really good episode if you ignore all the problems. Which really sums up onto why I can't be able to take Charlie seriously as a character, especially after the I Wanna Hold Your Hand episode. Because that prom episode wants me to see Charlie as a nice character, which she is, but those should be more than her being a nice character, because Stella is a nice character, and she ends up developing a character of her own, especially in her season 6 episode. This is literally another example onto why I can't be able to find the issues of Lincoln being paired up with any other girl or older girls problematic when the franchise itself isn't even bothered to have its own vision without Chris Savino. You can't just literally just throw in so many different crushes at me and expect it to work out. Like, the other crushes involving the other characters is somewhat debatable, because at the same time I can understand that they have different crushes. But when it comes to Lincoln, who is the main character, all I'm just gonna be thinking of is fanfiction shouldn't do all the work at this point. Like, I know fanfiction can do a lot more since that this could be the first time experiencing this type of material, but since I'm not new to this type of stuff and I've experienced so much of it in the past, mainly over the course of 1 year since becoming a fan of it at the end of 2021, all I can think of is do something that surprises me. Actually give the love interest something to do, something to experience that Lincoln hasn't. It's not that difficult. And regardless if people are mostly against pro-shipping, you need to understand that after watching all the episodes, I don't take pro-shipping seriously anymore. Like, no matter how problematic it is and no matter how severe it is, it doesn't change the fact that after all the years of watching, not really all the years, but after watching all the episodes and just looking in depth into these episodes, pro-shipping is honestly not a problem when the characters aren't getting the justice it deserves when it comes to how they will act in the earlier seasons. Like, if all this happened in 2016, I would understand considering that the show is new, but in 2023, it's really difficult to take the franchise seriously knowing forward that Nickelodeon cares little about it, especially of how it's handling its franchise and characters. Like, I understand that you do not approve of loud set shipping or any of that kind of stuff, but at the same time, these characters don't exist, and the fact that I'm talking about a character that is only exclusive towards the live action show, has little to no character, just goes to show that Nickelodeon can't be able to be committed of doing something in live action by having Lincoln being someone that only exists in the real world. Guys, this is one of the reasons why I don't take people's problems with pro-shipping or loud set shipping seriously. Because as much as I understand that they cannot handle that type of stuff, it's difficult to take the characters seriously when they're not being treated as actual people. And believe me, I'm gonna be saving that much once I get into the following Loud House project, either later this year or the following year. But my point is that I just have no interest into making that video. I'm just only proving my points onto why that the moral values from this show or this franchise itself is completely long gone after season 3. Look, I get it. At the end of the day, the Loud House franchise is catered to kids, but the problem is that Nickelodeon doesn't treat its shows seriously compared to Cartoon Network. And when it comes to how terrible the episodes were, especially from the cartoons that they did in the past, I don't even think that it's worth even mentioning that moral values is really important, even when they're taking itself seriously in shows like this. And the moral value that I've seen from this is that boys like Lincoln should be able to impress girls no matter what. In all honesty, I've seen this way too many times that at this point, I would probably see what it would feel like if the girls would probably do something towards the boys when it comes to them being teens. I know that there's only 8 more episodes in this season, but to be real with you, after watching this and the problems itself, I don't even think it's really worth it. I gave this show a chance and it delivered poorly. Like, at this point, I'm starting to convince that even if Charlie does come back, I don't even think it's going to make me convinced that she's going to get development at all. This type of writing that I've went through throughout this entire show just goes to show that the Willy Loud House is only there not only just to make money, but just to glorify the Loud House in live action. If this was all in a cartoon, this would definitely be Cartoon Crisis 3 material, but to be fair, this isn't one of the worst episodes in the entire franchise. I would definitely sit through this more than Squid and the other terrible episodes, but at the same time, it's not saying much when there are better options when a character is reading a bedtime fairy tale story to a baby or younger child. I rather put my focus on the cartoon rather than the live action show, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't even think that there's anything else that this will impress me. Because this 2-part episode was something that is supposed to impress me, but at the same time it was done too early with poor execution and a rushed love interest. I'm giving this 2-part episode a 4.25 out of 10.